Commander Allison Wright stood at the observation deck of the International Space Station Freedom, watching as the alien ship approached Earth orbit. At 52, with gray streaks in her brown hair and lines etched into her face, she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of someone who had seen combat. 25 years in the Marines, including 3 tours during the water wars of the 2120s, had taught her to trust her instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling her this first contact wasn't going to go as smoothly as the politicians hoped. "Commander, they're requesting permission to dock," said Lieutenant Gary Miller, a young officer who had never seen combat. Allison nodded. "Grant permission, and remember what I told you. Trust nothing, question everything. Stay alert," Gary recited. "Good man." The alien ship, a sleek vessel that seemed to shimmer between silver and blue, connected to the station with a precision that spoke of advanced technology. Allison straightened her uniform and touched the combat medallion she always wore, a reminder of the friends she'd lost in Jakarta when the seawalls broke. The airlock cycled open, revealing the delegation from what called itself the Galactic Confederacy. 3 distinct alien species entered the station. Leading them were the Zaxari, tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to calculate everything they saw. Behind them came the Volari, short and stocky with skin that rippled like water, and finally the Etherians, who seemed almost human except for their silver eyes and 6 fingers on each hand. "Welcome to Earth," Allison said, stepping forward. "I'm Commander Allison Wright, military liaison for the United Earth Government." The lead Zaxari bowed slightly. "I am High Commander Krell of the Galactic Confederacy Defense Force. These are my associates, Diplomatic Advisor Melis of the Volari, and Scientific Observer Thela of the Etherians." Krell's eyes swept over Allison in a way that reminded her of officers who underestimated her because she was a woman. Some things, it seemed, were universal. "Your species has achieved much in a short time," Krell said, "though your technology is quaint. We have watched your development since your first nuclear tests. The Confederacy believes you are ready for limited inclusion in our alliance." Allison caught the condescension in his tone. "Limited inclusion?" "As a protectorate." "Naturally," said Melis, the Volari diplomat. Her voice bubbled like water over rocks. "Full membership requires centuries of probation. Your species is barely space-capable." Allison smiled tightly. "I see. And what would this protectorate status entail? Resource sharing, technological guidance, military protection," Krell said, all 4 hands clasped behind his back. "In return, Earth would provide raw materials and accept Confederacy governance on interstellar matters." "You'll forgive me," Allison said carefully, "but that sounds less like an alliance and more like colonization." The aliens exchanged glances. Thela the Etherian spoke for the first time. "Your perspective is understandable but limited by your experience. The universe is more dangerous than you know. Without our protection, Earth would be vulnerable to species far less benevolent than ourselves. We should continue this discussion with your full government," Melis suggested. "This is merely a preliminary meeting." Allison nodded. "Of course, but first I'd like to understand more about the Confederacy's military structure. As Earth's military liaison, I need to assess compatibility." Krell seemed to stand straighter. "The Confederacy Defense Force is the most advanced military organization in known space. Our officers trained for centuries in combat simulations. Our technology is unmatched. Your planet has nothing comparable." "Perhaps not in technology," Allison conceded, "but Earth has something you might find valuable: combat veterans with actual battlefield experience." Krell's expression shifted to something Allison recognized as confusion. "Veterans? You mean warriors who have survived real combat?" "Yes. Like myself and many others who served in the water wars and other conflicts." Krell looked at his companions, and a sound emerged that Allison realized was laughter. "Simulated combat is superior to your limited real experiences, Commander. Our officers face thousands of scenarios, all more complex than anything your planet has seen. Allison felt her temper rising but kept her voice even. With respect, High Commander, no simulation can fully capture the reality of combat. The fear, the chaos, the need to improvise when everything goes wrong. A quaint perspective, Krell said dismissively. Perhaps you could demonstrate these special qualities you believe your veterans possess. I'd be happy to, Allison replied. In fact, I propose a joint military exercise. Your simulation-trained officers against our combat veterans. The aliens conferred briefly in their own language. Finally, Krell turned back to her. We accept. It would be educational for you to see true military excellence. We will prepare a suitable exercise on the moon you call Titan. The environment there will be challenging for both our species. After finalizing some details, the alien delegation returned to their ship, promising to send formal diplomatic envoys to Earth within days. As the airlock closed behind them, Gary let out a breath. Commander, did you just challenge an advanced alien civilization to a military competition? Allison smiled grimly. I did, and they took the bait. But their technology, their training, is meaningless without real experience, Allison interrupted. They've never had their plans fall apart while watching friends die around them. They've never had to make impossible choices with incomplete information in seconds to decide. She turned to look at the alien ship as it detached from the station. They think combat is a science. We know it's chaos. And humans have always been good at chaos. Over the next week, Earth was in turmoil. The appearance of alien life and the offer of protectorate status divided the population. Some welcomed the technology and protection the Confederacy offered. Others feared a loss of independence. In a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Allison met with her selected team for the exercise. The politicians are willing to sign away our independence because they're scared, she told the 4 veterans, seated around the table. Our job is to show the Confederacy that humans aren't to be underestimated. Major Frank Daniels, a grizzled urban warfare specialist, nodded. So we're going to beat the stuffing out of some aliens to earn their respect? Essentially, Allison said with a small smile. Captain Samantha Reeves, her dark hair cut in a practical bob, leaned forward. What are the parameters of this exercise? Capture the flag, basically. Limited weapons, survival in Titan's environment. Their team against ours. Lieutenant Eric Peterson, a former Navy SEAL with a scar running down his neck, grinned. Just like old times, but with aliens. Sergeant Olivia Martinez, who had been quietly studying the briefing materials, looked up. They're overconfident. That's an advantage for us. Allison nodded. Exactly. They expect to win easily. High Commander Krell practically laughed at the idea that real combat experience could compare to their simulations. When do we leave? Frank asked. Tomorrow. The Confederacy is providing transportation on one of their ships. As the meeting concluded, Allison remained behind, staring at the holographic image of Titan rotating above the table. Earth's future might well depend on how 5 aging combat veterans performed in this exercise. The Confederacy needed to see that humans weren't just another species to be patronized and controlled. They needed to learn that, when it came to survival, to adaptability, to sheer stubborn determination, humans, and especially human veterans, were in a class of their own. Allison touched her combat medallion again and whispered, "This one's for you, Rodriguez." Her friend who had died saving 3 civilians during the Jakarta flooding wouldn't be forgotten. And neither would the lesson his sacrifice had taught her, that true courage wasn't found in simulations but in the heart of real combat. Tomorrow, the aliens would learn that lesson too. The Confederacy ship cut through space with silent efficiency, carrying Earth's veterans towards Saturn's largest moon. Inside the vessel, Allison and her team sat in uncomfortable chairs designed for bodies different from their own. The aliens had provided them with special suits to survive Titan's harsh environment, thick, flexible material that would protect against the extreme cold and toxic atmosphere. These suits are incredible, Olivia said, examining the material. As a combat medic, she had an eye for details others might miss. The fabric responds to body temperature. I wonder if we could adapt this for emergency medicine back home. Focus on the mission, Allison reminded her. We can think about technology transfers after we've earned their respect. Frank was studying a holographic display of the training zone. They've selected a 20-square-kilometer area near what they call the methane lakes. Rough terrain, limited visibility, temperatures cold enough to freeze unprotected skin in seconds. Sounds like fun, Eric said with a dry smile. The Navy SEAL had once spent 3 days hiding in Arctic waters during a counter-terrorism operation. What are the victory conditions again? Capture the flag, Samantha replied. Their base, our base, 1 flag in each. First team to capture the opponent's flag and return it to their base wins. Simple enough, Frank said. What's the catch? No catch, came a voice from the doorway. High Commander Krell entered, all forearms behind his back in what they now recognized as a posture of authority. The exercise is straightforward. It will demonstrate basic tactical principles. Allison stood to face him. And weapons? Limited, non-lethal options, Krell said. Stun projectors, immobilization nets, sensory disruptors, nothing that would cause permanent harm. He seemed to study them. Your team is older than I expected. Experience comes with time, Allison replied. Evenly, indeed, though I must inform you that my team has the equivalent of 2,000 years of combined combat training. Training, Frank emphasized quietly. Not experience. Krell's expression shifted subtly. Was that annoyance? The distinction is meaningless. Our simulations account for all variables. We'll see, Allison said. Krell departed, and the team returned to their preparations. As they approached Titan, they could see its orange haze through the viewports. Remember, Allison told her team as they prepared to deploy. They're expecting us to follow conventional tactics. That's their weakness. The landing craft deposited them at their assigned base, a small prefabricated structure nestled between rocky outcroppings. Outside, Titan's landscape stretched in eerie orange-tinged twilight. Rivers and lakes of liquid methane reflected the distant sun and wind-whipped hydrocarbon particles across the alien terrain. Their flag, Earth's blue and white, stood on a pole at the center of their base. In the distance, perhaps 10 kilometers away, they knew the Confederacy team had an identical setup with their silver and blue standard. They're giving us an hour to prepare, Allison said, checking the alien timepiece they'd been provided. Let's make it count. Instead of setting up defenses as the aliens likely expected, Allison's team immediately began altering their equipment and environment. Frank examined the immobilization nets they'd been given. These use some kind of energy field to trap whatever. They're thrown over, but look. He placed one partially over a rock and activated it. The energy field grew from the net's corners. The containment field expands in a predictable pattern. Samantha was already collecting rocks and methane ice. If we layer these with the right timing, we could create cascading traps, Eric finished. Nice. While they worked, Olivia studied the terrain through binoculars. The methane lakes create a natural barrier to the east. They'll expect us to avoid them, which means they'll concentrate their forces to the west, Allison concluded. So we go east. Through the lakes? Eric asked, though his tone suggested he was already calculating how to do it. Not through, Allison replied. Over. They worked quickly, repurposing parts of their equipment. The hour passed, and the alien timepiece chimed. Exercise commencing, came Krell's voice through their communication devices. May the superior tactics prevail. The Confederacy team moved out immediately, as their scout drones revealed. 6 Zaxari officers in formation, moving with precision toward the western approach to the Earth base. Allison smiled. Just as we thought, they're following standard flanking procedures. She turned to her team. Let's show them how Earth fights. Instead of setting up a defensive perimeter, Allison left their base completely undefended. The entire team moved east, using Eric's improvised ice-walking devices, their stun projectors, reconfigured to emit low heat that temporarily solidified the surface of the methane lakes enough to support their weight for a few seconds at a time. This is insane, Frank muttered, as he hopped across the frozen patches, each step a calculated risk as the surface began to melt beneath him. "That's why it'll work?" Samantha replied, moving like a dancer across the treacherous surface. "No simulation would ever suggest this approach. The risk calculation would deem it unacceptable." They made it across the methane barrier in 20 minutes, a route the aliens had clearly considered impassable based on their drone patterns. This put Earth's team behind enemy lines, while the Confederacy force was still methodically advancing toward the empty Earth base. "Their operational security is overconfident," Olivia observed as they approached the alien base. "Only one guard." The lone Zaxari stood at attention, clearly not expecting any threat from this direction. Samantha nodded to Frank, who activated one of their modified immobilization nets. The energy field expanded in unexpected ways thanks to the metallic particles they'd embedded in it, creating a disruptive pattern that confused the alien sensors. Before the guard could react, Eric had slipped behind him and applied pressure to what their briefing material suggested was a nerve cluster. The Zaxari collapsed, unconscious. "Oldest trick in the book," Eric said with satisfaction. Inside the base, they found the Confederacy flag unprotected. Allison grabbed it, but paused before they retreated. Samantha set the surprise. Samantha grinned, placing a modified sensory disruptor near the entrance. "They'll expect us to take the same route back, when they return to find their flag gone." The team exited and took a completely different path back, skirting the methane lakes to the north, using natural features for cover. Through their communication devices, they heard confusion as the Confederacy team reached Earth's empty base. "Where are they?" came a Zaxari voice. "There's no defense, no tactical logic." Another voice, Krell's, responded with growing concern. "Return to our base immediately, something is wrong." By the time the Confederacy team realized what had happened, Earth's veterans were already halfway back to their base with the captured flag. The aliens abandoned their careful formation and raced back, only to trigger Samantha's trap when they reached their own base. The sensory disruptor, modified to affect their communication systems, threw their coordination into chaos. When Allison planted the Confederacy flag next to Earth's own, the exercise timepiece showed less than 1 hour had elapsed, 1/6 of the expected duration. "Exercise complete," the automated system announced. "Earth team victorious." Through their communications came only silence from the Confederacy team. Then finally Krell's voice. "This is impossible. The simulation predictions gave you less than a 2% chance of success, and certainly not in this time frame." Allison exchanged satisfied looks with her team. "That's the difference between simulation and experience, Commander. In real combat, sometimes the only winning move is the one no algorithm would ever suggest." As they waited for extraction, Frank chuckled. "Their faces, or whatever they have for faces, when they realize we went through the methane lakes. The best part," Samantha said, "is that they still don't understand how we did it. They're looking for some advanced technology or trick." Allison nodded. "They don't realize that the most unpredictable weapon in the universe is the human mind under pressure." She looked up at the orange haze of Titan's sky. "This was just round 1. They'll adapt for the next exercise." "Let them," said Eric confidently. "We've been adapting to impossible situations our whole careers." The extraction ship appeared on the horizon, and Allison could see a frustrated Krell at the controls. This small victory wouldn't be enough to change the Confederacy's view of humanity. But it was a start. The real test would come next when the aliens stopped underestimating them and started fighting seriously. Olivia summed up what they were all thinking. They thought they knew combat from their simulations. Now they're getting their first real lesson. The journey back to the Confederacy ship was quiet. The Zaxari team avoided eye contact with the humans, their postures rigid with what Allison recognized as wounded pride. Only Krell approached them as they prepared for the second exercise. "Your tactics were unexpected," Krell admitted, his forearms moving in what seemed like an agitated pattern. "We have analyzed your approach and determined it was recklessly dangerous. Crossing methane lakes using improvised tools violated safety protocols. But it worked, Allison pointed out. Success does not validate poor tactics, Krell insisted. In a real combat situation, Frank interrupted. The rules change. You do what you need to survive and complete the mission. Krell's eyes narrowed. The next exercise will be more challenging. Your luck will not hold. After Krell left, Samantha shook her head. They still don't get it. They think we just got lucky. Good, Allison said. Let them keep underestimating us. The second exercise would take place on a different part of Titan, in a region filled with deep canyons and ice formations. This time, the mission was to locate and retrieve a series of data nodes hidden throughout the terrain while defending against the opposing team. This plays to their strengths, Eric observed as they reviewed the mission parameters. They have superior scanning technology to find the nodes. And there are 6 of them versus 5 of us, Olivia added. They can cover more ground. Then we don't play their game, Allison decided. We change the rules. While the Confederacy team methodically prepared search patterns and defensive formations, Earth's veterans once again modified their equipment. They reconfigured their communication devices to detect the energy signatures of the data nodes, turning simple tools into makeshift scanners. Frank worked on their stun projectors. If I adjust the resonance frequency, we can use these to trigger small methane eruptions. Nothing dangerous, but enough to create distractions. Samantha studied the map. The canyons create natural choke points. If we place ourselves correctly, we can ambush them one by one, Eric finished. The timepiece chimed and the second exercise began. The Confederacy team split into 3 pairs, each taking a different search sector. Allison nodded to her team. You know what to do. Instead of spreading out to search, the humans moved as a single unit. They headed to the deepest canyon, a location where 3 of the data nodes were most likely hidden based on their signal analysis. They moved quietly, using the ice formations for cover. The first Zaxari pair appeared at the canyon's edge, scanning methodically. They had already located a data node and were approaching it confidently. From her hiding spot, Allison could see that they maintained perfect textbook formation and perfect predictability. She signaled to Frank, who triggered his modified stun projector. A plume of methane erupted 50 meters to the right of the aliens, immediately drawing their attention. They moved to investigate in perfect coordination. Perfect, but wrong. Samantha slipped out from behind an ice formation, moving silently toward the data node. She retrieved it and disappeared back into cover before the Zaxari realized they had been tricked. 1 data node secured for Earth. The humans continued through the canyon system, employing similar tactics. When they encountered the second Zaxari pair, Eric used the canyon walls to create echoing sounds that confused the aliens' directional sensors. While the Zaxari tried to locate the source, Olivia approached from the opposite direction, securing another data node. 2 data nodes secured. The third pair, however, included Krell. He had clearly learned from the first encounter and was more cautious. They are utilizing psychological tactics, he told his partner. Maintain focus on the mission parameters. But knowing about psychological tactics didn't make one immune to them. Allison's team executed a complex series of distractions, forcing the Zaxari to divide their attention. In the confusion, Frank secured the third data node. 3 data nodes secured. The humans were moving toward a 4th location when trouble struck. A natural methane pocket, disturbed by their activities, erupted beneath an ice shelf. The sudden explosion sent shards of frozen methane and water ice flying. One large chunk struck Eric, knocking him down a slope. He tumbled, his suit tearing on the sharp ice. Man down, Allison called. Olivia, assess. Olivia was at Eric's side in seconds. Suit breach. He's exposed to the atmosphere. She quickly applied an emergency patch, but Eric was already showing signs of chemical exposure. He needs medical attention. The mission parameters allowed for injured participants to be extracted without penalty, but it would leave the team short-handed. As Allison was considering options, Krell and his partner appeared at the top of the ridge, having heard the explosion. Your team member requires assistance, Krell observed. scanning Eric with a device. We will pause the exercise. No need, Allison said. The rules allow for extraction. We'll continue with 4. Krell seemed surprised. You are at a significant disadvantage, with reduced numbers. We've faced worse odds, Frank said with a shrug. But Olivia made an unexpected decision. Rather than calling for Eric's extraction, she approached Krell. Your scanning device, it has medical functions, doesn't it? Krell hesitated. Yes, it is standard equipment. May I use it? I can stabilize him better with your technology. After a moment's consideration, Krell handed over the device. Olivia quickly figured out its operation and treated Eric's exposure. This is remarkable, she said as she worked. It's neutralizing the toxic compounds and repairing tissue damage simultaneously. Krell watched with growing curiosity. You adapted to using our technology with no training. Combat medics learn to use whatever's available, Olivia explained. In the Jakarta flooding, I performed surgery with fishing line and vodka as disinfectant. Something changed in Krell's posture. Your experience is different from our training. Eric was soon stable enough to continue. As Olivia helped him up, Krell stepped back. We will resume the exercise. May the best team prevail. His voice lacked the dismissive tone from earlier. As the Zaxari pair departed, Samantha whispered, Did we just earn some respect? Maybe, Allison said. But the exercise isn't over. The teams continued their search. The Confederacy team located 2 data nodes, bringing the score to 3-2 in Earth's favor. As time ran down, both teams converged on the location of the final node, a narrow ice bridge spanning a deep methane lake. The node sat in the center of the bridge, equally distant from both teams. Krell and his partner approached from one side, Allison and Frank from the other. A classic standoff, Krell observed. The first to move onto the bridge puts themselves at a tactical disadvantage. Allison studied the situation, then smiled. Not if both sides moved together. She holstered her weapons and walked forward slowly. After a moment's hesitation, Krell did the same. They met in the middle, the data node between them. Allison could retrieve it first, securing victory for Earth. But instead, she asked, What would your simulations recommend in this situation? They would calculate that whoever reaches for the node first becomes vulnerable to attack, Krell replied. Therefore, optimal strategy is to force the opponent to move first. Creating a stalemate, Allison noted. But in real combat, sometimes you need to take risks to break a stalemate. Sometimes you need to trust. She extended her hand. How about we declare this one a draw? Krell seemed genuinely surprised. After a moment, he extended one of his 4 hands. A draw. Your team has demonstrated considerable skill. As they walked back from the bridge together, Krell asked, How did your team adapt so quickly to unfamiliar terrain and equipment? That's what combat veterans do, Allison explained. We adapt, we improvise, we overcome. Perhaps, Krell said, slowly, there is more to learn from Earth than we initially believed. The Confederacy ship hummed softly as it orbited Titan. In the observation deck, Allison stood with Krell, watching the orange moon below. The tension between them had eased, replaced by a cautious, professional respect. Your team performed beyond our statistical models, Krell admitted. We are recalibrating our assessment of human military capabilities. Allison smiled slightly. Glad to hear it. We have prepared a final exercise, Krell continued. A joint operation. Your team and mine working together to secure an objective. Interesting, Allison said. What's the scenario? We have established a simulated outpost on the far side of Titan. Your team and mine must work together to secure it against automated defense systems. Before Allison could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed along the corridors. What's happening? She asked. Krell moved quickly to a control panel, his 4 hands dancing across the alien interface. Unknown vessel, detected at the edge of the system. His posture stiffened. It's not responding to identification protocols. The ship's captain, another Zaxari named Vrax, appeared on a communication screen. High Commander, we're receiving a distress signal from Outpost Sentinel-3. That's not part of the exercise, Krell said, suddenly alert. Play the message. The screen flickered, showing a panicked Etherian. This is Sentinel-3. We are under attack by Krell forces. They've breached our... The transmission cut to static. Allison noticed the confusion on Krell's face. What are Krell forces? Not what. Who? Krell's voice was grim. The Krell are an ancient species, highly aggressive. We believe they had retreated to the outer regions centuries ago. The ship captain returned to the screen. High Commander, our long-range sensors confirm it. A Krell battlecruiser has destroyed Sentinel-3. They are now on an intercept course with us. How long until they reach us? Krell asked. Approximately 6 hours. Krell turned to Allison. We must evacuate you back to Earth immediately. Why? Allison asked. What's going on? The Krell are conquerors. They consider all other species inferior. If they've returned to this system, your planet is in danger. The ship rocked suddenly. Allison grabbed a railing to steady herself. What was that? She asked. Long-range weapons fire, the captain reported. They've disabled our primary engines. Evacuation is no longer possible. Krell's posture changed, becoming rigid with what Allison recognized as fear. Standard protocols dictate we surrender. The Krell sometimes spare those who submit. Allison shook her head. That's not how we do things on Earth. She called her team to the bridge. The veterans arrived quickly, sensing the real danger in the EO. Air. This isn't an exercise anymore, Allison told them. We're under attack by a hostile species called the Krell. They've disabled the ship's engines, and they'll be here in 6 hours. Frank assessed the situation immediately. What are our defensive capabilities? Krell answered, This is a diplomatic vessel with minimal weapons. It was not designed for combat. What about the Krell? Samantha asked. What are their strengths and weaknesses? They rely on overwhelming force, Krell explained. Their battle algorithms are thousands of years old but highly effective. They attack in precise patterns, overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and firepower. Patterns, Eric repeated, exchanging a look with Allison. That could be useful. Olivia was examining the ship schematics on a display. What's this large area here? Cargo bay, answered one of the Zaxari crew. It contains equipment for the exercises, including the training weapons. Allison's mind was already forming a plan. We need to convert this ship from a target into a trap. If the Krell follow predictable patterns, we can use that against them. Krell seemed skeptical. Their ship is 4 times our size with weapons that could destroy us with a single concentrated barrage. Then we don't let them get that barrage off, Allison said firmly. We need every bit of information you have on Krell tactics and technology, and we need your crew to follow our lead. After a moment of hesitation, Krell nodded. The safety of my crew is my priority. What do you propose? For the next 5 hours, humans and aliens worked side by side. They converted the cargo bay into an elaborate trap, using the training equipment in ways its designers never intended. Stun projectors were reconfigured to overload Krell shield frequencies. Immobilization nets were rigged throughout corridors as invisible barriers. Frank worked with the Zaxari engineers to modify the ship's sensor array. If they follow patterns, we need to feed them false data. Make them think we're exactly where they expect us to be. Samantha and Eric trained the Confederacy crew in guerrilla tactics. Forget your formations, Eric told them. When they board, hit and run. Never stay in one place. Olivia set up a medical station with both human and alien supplies. Their weapons will cause different injuries than we're used to. We need to be prepared for anything. Allison and Krell stood at the command center, finalizing their strategy. Your approach is unorthodox, Krell admitted. No simulation would recommend these tactics against a superior force. That's because simulations calculate odds, Allison replied. Humans specialize in beating the odds. The sensor alarm sounded. The Krell ship had arrived early, looming outside like a massive predator. They're hailing us, the communications officer reported. Put them through, Krell ordered. The view screen activated, showing a being that resembled a reptile crossed with an insect. Its exoskeleton gleamed metallically, and multiple yellow eyes blinked independently. "I am War Commander Zul of the Krell Dominion," it said in a clicking, hissing voice. "Your vessel is claimed as tribute to the Dominion. Surrender and you may. Serve. Resist and you will be eradicated." Krell started to respond according to protocol, but Allison stepped forward. "This is Commander Allison Wright of Earth. We do not surrender to threats." The Krell commander's eyes blinked rapidly. "Earth? This system has no habitable worlds besides the primary gas planet." "Check your outdated records," Allison said confidently. "Humans of Earth are now allies of the Galactic Confederacy, and we don't appreciate uninvited visitors." War Commander Zul made a sound like grinding stones. "Your species is unknown to us. It will be catalogued after your capture." The transmission cut off. "They're preparing to board," the sensor officer reported. "Standard Krell procedure. They'll send boarding parties through our cargo bay." "Exactly as expected," Allison said with grim satisfaction. She turned to Krell. "Your crew needs to follow our plan exactly. No improvising, no heroics." Krell's 4 hands made a gesture of agreement. "My crew will follow your veterans' lead." The ship shuddered as the Krell vessel attached itself like a parasite. Alarms blared as the cargo bay reported a breach. "They're in," Frank reported over the comm system. "First wave is proceeding exactly as predicted. 10 Krell soldiers in diamond formation." Allison nodded to Krell. "Now we show them what real combat experience looks like." Krell's response surprised her. "For Earth and the Confederacy." He activated the ship-wide comm. "All crew, execute Operation Veterans Wisdom." As the Krell boarding party moved deeper into the ship, they had no idea they were walking into a trap designed by people who had spent their lives turning disadvantages into victories. People who had learned that in real combat, experience trumped theory every time. The true battle was about to begin. The first wave of Krell soldiers marched through the corridors with mechanical precision. Their insect-like forms moved in perfect synchronization, weapons held at identical angles. They followed a standard boarding protocol that had served them for centuries: secure the entry point, advance in formation, neutralize resistance, capture the command center. What they didn't expect was that the humans and their Confederacy allies had turned the entire ship into a combat zone designed specifically to counter these tactics. Frank watched from a hidden maintenance shaft as the Krell approached the first trap. "They're maintaining standard formation, just like you said," he whispered into his comm. 3, 2, 1. On cue, Samantha triggered the modified stun projectors. Instead of firing directly at the Krell, they overloaded the corridor's power conduits. The lights flickered and died, plunging the area into darkness. The Krell immediately activated their helmet illumination, creating perfect targets for Frank's next surprise. The ceiling panels, rigged with the immobilization nets, dropped silently. 3 Krell soldiers were instantly ensnared, their struggling forms causing confusion in the perfect formation. "First disruption successful," Frank reported. 7 targets continuing, formation broken. In another section of the ship, Eric led a mixed team of humans and Zaxari in a hit-and-run attack. As the second Krell group entered a junction, Eric's team fired modified weapons from multiple angles, then disappeared into maintenance tunnels before the Krell could respond. "They're adapting," Eric warned as he watched the Krell shift their formation. "They're splitting into smaller units." "That's what we want," Allison replied from the command center. "Divide and confuse." Krell stood beside her, watching the tactical display with growing appreciation. "Your strategy is working. The Krell rely on coordinated group tactics. By forcing them to divide, you've eliminated their primary advantage." "Exactly," Allison said. "No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. The key is adapting faster than they can." On the medical deck, Olivia had transformed the area into both a treatment center and another trap. As a group of Krell soldiers approached, seeking to secure what their protocols identified as a critical area, they encountered what appeared to be abandoned, injured crew members. The Krell lowered their weapons slightly, a pre-programmed response, to assess potential slaves rather than eliminate them. That moment of hesitation was all Olivia needed. She activated the environmental controls, flooding the area with a gas mixture harmless to humans and Zaxari, but disorienting to the Krell's respiratory systems. Medical section secured, she reported. 5 Krell incapacitated. Across the ship, similar scenes played out. The veterans' experience with urban warfare, guerrilla tactics, and battlefield improvisation proved devastating against the Krell's algorithmic approach to combat. On the Krell ship, War Commander Zul watched with growing rage as boarding team after boarding team reported unexpected resistance. "Impossible," he hissed. "They are following no recognized combat doctrine." He dispatched his elite guard, 12 soldiers with advanced weapons and armor. "Eliminate all resistance. No prisoners." Allison saw the new threat on the tactical display. "They're sending in their heavy units. Everyone fall back to secondary positions." The elite Krell guard moved through the ship, their advanced sensors detecting the hidden defenders. They were smarter, more adaptable than the standard troops, and they began to systematically clear the traps. "We're losing control of the lower decks," Frank reported. "These new guys are good." "Time for Phase 2, Allison ordered. Throughout the ship, the defenders suddenly retreated toward the command center. The Krell, sensing victory, pursued eagerly. On the bridge, Allison nodded to Krell. "Your turn." The Zaxari commander activated a sequence on the main console. Throughout the IB ship, emergency bulkheads slammed down, isolating the elite Krell into small groups. Simultaneously, Eric and Samantha led strike teams down separate maintenance shafts, attacking the isolated Krell soldiers from unexpected angles. War Commander Zul watched in fury as his elite guard was systematically eliminated. This defies all combat logic. How can inferior beings defeat superior forces? In desperation, he ordered the Krell ship to lock weapons on the Confederacy vessel. "Prepare to destroy the target." On the Confederacy bridge, alarm sounded. "They're charging weapons," the sensor officer reported. "They'll breach our hull in seconds." "Now, Frank," Allison ordered. In the engine room, Frank and a team of Zaxari engineers activated the final part of their plan. They had reconfigured the ship's damaged engines to create a massive electromagnetic pulse. As the pulse fired, it washed over the attacking ship, temporarily disabling its weapon systems. "Their shields are down," Krell announced. "But the effect will only last minutes." Allison turned to the communications officer. "Send the message now." The officer transmitted a pre-recorded message to the Krell ship. "Attention, Krell vessel. This is your only warning. 50 Confederacy warships are converging on this position. Surrender or be destroyed." It was a bluff, but one backed by careful preparation. Frank had modified the ship's sensor array to emit false signatures that would appear on Krell scanners as an approaching fleet. "They're scanning the system," the sensor officer reported. "They're detecting our false signatures." For tense moments, everyone on the bridge held their breath. Then the Krell ship disengaged its docking clamps and backed away. "They're retreating," Krell announced, his voice containing something like awe. "Your bluff worked." "Sometimes winning isn't about having the biggest gun," Allison said. "It's about making the enemy think you do." As the Krell ship prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, War Commander Zul sent a final message. "This is not over. The Dominion will return in force." "And we'll be ready," Allison replied before cutting the transmission. In the aftermath, Confederacy medics treated the wounded while engineering teams began repairs. On the observation deck, Allison found Krell staring out at the stars. "Your tactics saved my crew," he said without turning. "The Confederacy owes Earth a debt." "We did it together," Allison corrected. "Your people adapted quickly." "Because we followed your veterans' lead." Krell turned to face her. "I have made my report to Confederacy High Command. I have recommended that Earth be granted full membership, not as a protectorate but as an equal partner." "That's quite a change from your initial assessment," Allison noted. "The Krell threat is real," Krell said. "They will return, and when they do, the Confederacy will need what your veterans can teach us. Not just tactics, but how to think beyond algorithms and simulations." 1 month later, Allison stood in a large hall on Earth as representatives from the Confederacy signed the formal alliance treaty. Beside her, her team watched with pride as Krell presented them with Confederacy military honors, the first ever given to a non-member species. After the ceremony, Krell approached Allison with a proposal. The Confederacy is establishing a new military academy. We would be honored if Earth's veterans would serve as instructors. Allison smiled. Teaching alien soldiers how to fight like humans? Sounds interesting. 6 months later, she stood before a class of mixed species, Zexari, Valari, Etherians, and the first humans to train with the Confederacy. On the wall behind her was the Academy's motto, written in multiple languages: simulations teach tactics. Veterans teach victory. As Allison began the day's lesson, she knew that when the Krell returned, they would face something they had never encountered before, a Confederacy that had learned to fight with the unpredictable, adaptive spirit of Earth's veterans, and that would make all the difference.